and copies of which were in the packets. Any revisions necessary for the minutes? If not, a motion to approve would be in order. Motion by Smith, is there a second? Second by Martins. Members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None are opposed. Minutes are approved. Item number 2 is discussion and possible action regarding a budget modification for bus procurement. And Mary Ann, if you want to walk us through that?
Yep, so at the last meeting, we had reviewed the need for the additional $60,000 due to the optional equipment. And at that time, the directive was to find a funding source for it and put it into the 2020 budget. So this budget modification, basically, I looked through our capital budget for 2019 and saw that, based on our current projection for special assessment income is going to be low. So if we adjusted that to about $60,000, that we feel we can achieve easily, and that would fund that capital budget.
Okay.
And if you recall, Greg needed to be able to say that the funding was in place or that there was a commitment for that funding in place. So we would accomplish that by
Okay.
this resolution then, because funding would indeed be in place.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so with that, does anyone have questions for Mary Ann? Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I guess one quick question. What usually contributes to special assessments?
So this year, we have an unusual situation. So, every time we do a street project, we have a special assessment policy that then says how much of that street would be would be assessed to the property owner. We do have some situations where we did work outside of the city limits, or we had a side agreement that said if we're not going to assess this until development or sale of the property occurs. And so at that point, it's really hard to know when that special assessment income is going to come in. So we never count on that. And this year, we had several of those types of parcels sell. And so that special assessment income came in. And so we've had much more income than we had originally predicted.
Okay. Makes
Excellent. Do we have a motion then to approve the budget modification for the bus procurement? Motion by Kalbach, is there a second by Nutting? Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries. Let me switch back here to our agenda. Item number 3 is discussion and possible action on authorizing the redemption of the outstanding state trust fund loan for $646,258.29 and the related accrued interest.
So when we went through our borrowing plan for 2019, I had proposed paying off our state trust fund loan. If you recall, this is a higher interest rate, and so, as we look through what we could pay off early, we would be motivated to do that because this is at a higher interest rate than our typical borrowing, one. Number two, typically when we borrow money through the open market, there's a little bit more red tape if you want to pay off debt early because you have call provisions that you have to accommodate, and you typically can only call the debt at its end of life. So it's a little harder to do that. And the reason we have sufficient funds, we budget about $4,123,000 a year of levy to the debt service fund each year. And we accomplish that because it really helps to have that even levy each year. But some years we might not need that full amount for debt retirement, and some years we need a little bit more. So we rely on those reserves to, I guess, accommodate that flat levy. But based on that fund balance and in talking to our financial advisors and projecting out our debt retirement in the next few years, we feel very comfortable that we could retire this early and it wouldn't create any problems of maintaining that flat levy in future years. So we would be paying off, I guess to summarize, we'd be paying off a higher interest rate. There's no like legal costs of accomplishing that. Our financial advisors don't have to help us, bond counsel doesn't have to help us, so it's
Okay.
really cheap to pay it off early. And we just have to send a letter letting them know, and it needs to be paid off by August 31st, because the state trust fund only lets you pay your debt early between January 1st and August 31st. Why?
So
I'm
we're
not
just
quite
in
sure.
time.
Yeah, we would be just in time.
Okay. Well, and it looks like here, according to this, we're saving $126,150 in interest. and
Yes.
That's always a good thing. So do we have a motion then to approve the early payoff of the state trust fund loan? Motion by Nutting, is there a second? Second by Smith. Further discussion? Dave, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And just to repeat that, you said there wasn't any prepayment
Penalties, no.
issues of that? Thank
No,
you, very good.
and no legal costs either.
Well done, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, then with a motion on the floor, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None are opposed. Motion carries. That brings us to item number 4, discussion and possible action regarding a budget modification for the police evidence storage facility.
Yep. So Matt's going to talk about it.
Welcome.
Lucky me.
Lucky you.
Good evening, everyone. As you will recall, when we were going through CIP last year, we expressed a need for an evidence storage building. At that time, my, which I've recently learned, uneducated way of getting prices, I asked this council to approve $204,000 or $203,500 for the construction of that project. As I've worked to learning to what it really costs to build a building, it's significantly more than that. So we are asking for a budget modification. We did go to bid. We received 2 bidders. The low bid is not, as it's reflected here, at $500,000. The low bid for the completion of the project in its entirety is $359,568. And I think that as I've spoken to those contractors, that's reflective of an increased cost in materials and the current state of building going on in our area and the economic situation that these contractors can demand a premium price to construct because they're really busy.
Well, and I think I remember when we talked about the building in CIP, it was difficult to even get a price that was good for more than 30 or 60 days because the state of the materials and everything was in such flux that it was difficult for them to pinpoint a number that would stand the test of time where we could take our time to make that decision and have that price still be good 9+ months later. So it's no great surprise that it's a little more expensive than we thought.
Correct. It was sticker shock for me to see even the $359,000 price. I will express to the council that there are some other options and ways we can try and reduce that cost. Mary Ann can voice her thoughts on, in that price, $32,000 is associated with the asphalting of the driveway and the parking area at this facility. It's highly unlikely they're going to be able to asphalt that this year yet. So if we chose to asphalt that in the future, as within the next year or so, we could take $32,000 off of the borrowing if this resolution is approved. Ultimately, we got to pay
And
the.
phase that in at the end.
Right, we
or-
got to
yeah.
pay the piper at some point either way. It's just where that funding source is going to come from to do that, whether it's part of an asphalt project with the city or whether it's part of this construction project. I'm still hoping to reduce some of those costs with the contractor, as this is the same location we're going to do, hopefully someday, the police range. And he was expressing the expense of hauling away all the fill that they'd have to dig out. And I said, well, you're not hauling away anything, just bulldoze it off to the side, because we're going to have to buy fill when we do that range. So
Sure.
I'm expecting the price to come down slightly
For the site prep and that?
for the site prep. And lastly, we could do all 3 of these or the combination of any. I'm not sure everybody was on the council at the time when the police department sold a Tommy gun. And at that time, we received a resolution to use the funds from that Tommy gun to build an educational facility at our range. And that's when we learned we need to, as we went to construct that, we learned that we weren't going to be able to build that at our current range site, which is owned by 3M. I wouldn't expect that we would be using those funds anytime in the next 2 to 3 years or 4 years. Even if through CIP, the council approved this range project to start, So that money just sits in an account right now, and if the council would prefer us to use $30,000 to help pay this down right now, to borrow less, the police department has no objection to that.
Okay. What are your thoughts on that, Mary Ann? I mean, eventually, when the range project comes along, we would probably end up with a CIP for it anyway.
Right.
And where we'd rank it and score it, and we'd just borrow for it at the time at whatever rate, so,
Yeah, I would definitely support applying those funds to this project.
okay.
You know, Matt and I talked about the 32,000 for the asphalt. You know, again, that's going to be one of those things of, well, do you borrow it this year or do you borrow it next year?
Right.
And I didn't really see a big difference there unless we felt that we would get a better price on the road by adding it to another project. I don't really
That's the thing,
know
I guess
how
if we
that
could
would
source the
work.
asphalt in bulk with a road project or something and do it in connection, but,
And I do think, you know, oftentimes with a building project, and with the street projects too, you know, we usually try to retain a little something for a contingency, which, you know, if we do the exact amount that we need, we wouldn't have a contingency, but if Matt's able to carve off some savings in, like he was saying, hauling away the dirt, that would hopefully then provide a contingency if there was something else that was found
That
that we
came
weren't
up, yeah.
aware of, though on a, you know, flat green parcel, you wouldn't think that you would have too many issues. So I guess I wouldn't, I have no problem either way. You want to do the 32,000 for the asphalt, you could certainly delay that till 2020, and I definitely would support
30,000 out of the Tommy gun
30,000.
sale?
Yeah, I mean, borrowing costs are good now, the rates are good, so, you know, there's nothing wrong with borrowing it, and we know the project's going to be completed on a timely basis, so I have no problems knowing that the the asphalt wouldn't take place till next spring. That isn't a problem for us, so it's,
Well, and with the way the
Horse of
season
peace,
is
I
going, we
guess.
probably couldn't get at the work until spring
Yeah,
anyway.
right.
You know, even if they get the building up yet this fall, when the cold weather comes, there's no more asphalt, so. Well, that's true, yeah, that's true. So what are your thoughts, committee? Do you want to go ahead and use both of those cost reduction options to pave the lot in the summer of 2020 perhaps, and then access 30,000 of the funds from the Tommy gun sale to reduce this borrowing? Dave, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking of a different line of questions prior to this one, but I would be in support of that too at this moment. But is this location more expensive than another location, and why did we choose this location?
We chose this location because, excuse me, this is property that the city already owned.
Okay,
And the location, I'm getting quite the education in this whole process of building things.
as
but-
are we.
But I will tell you that the location that this building is going is flat.
Okay.
So you come off the road, there's no hill, it's flat. My lay opinion is that's probably the cheapest piece of ground to put a structure on as opposed to a hillside or something else.
And I think Chris Schock said that parcel out in the business campus was smaller and awkwardly shaped, so it wasn't necessarily conducive to a private sector project.
Thank you very much. That's,
So it kind of uses up some land out there that we may not be able to market for another purpose.
those are good details. Thank you.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Dennis.
This new facility, I imagine you'll be storing pieces of evidence from various cases. Will you also be able to store automobiles at this location?
This facility will be 60 feet wide by 120 feet long, and it is primarily, we could store anything we want underneath there, but it's being designed for the storage of boats, vehicles, large items. We have numerous vehicles that we're anticipating storing for the next 30 or 40 years as pieces of homicide evidence, except it's a vehicle, which makes it very difficult. So this whole facility is not to store small pieces of evidence in a box. This is to store large items such as boats, vehicles, or
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right, so with that, do we have a motion then to approve a budget modification as described for this building, recognizing that we would access $30,000 of proceeds from the sale of the Tommy gun and defer the parking lot pavement until 2020? We have a motion by Smith. Is there a second? Second by Nutting. Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None are opposed, so that motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
So then I think my math says that the budget mod is $95,000 then.
Okay. All right.
Trust your math.
I'll trust her math too, any day. Okay, and let's see, item number 5 is review of commercial rehab loan for Decker Driving Academy. And we've got Tammy with us from Community Development to talk about that.
And thank you for letting me come talk this with you. Typically, we bring our commercial rehab applications through economic development, but since there's no meeting in July, we didn't want to hold up this project. With the commercial rehab, it is funds that we use to help business owners with the facade renovations of a business. We received an application from Decker Driving, and I don't know if you've driven 6th Street lately, but they've bought a property, and they started the renovations, the interiors, they've done a lot to it, and they're looking for some funds to do the exterior. In the packet, it shows what it currently looks like and what the proposed looks like. And as you can see, it's in my
Vast
opinion, a
improvement.
huge improvement along an area that needs some improvements. So I was
Beautiful.
excited about this one. We put down a sources and use chart for you so you can see that what they're requesting of us over the total project cost ends up being about 25%. And anytime we're under 30%, we think it's a good project.
Sure. Okay. And the commercial rehab fund is a recycling fund,
It's a
right? So as
recycle-
the loans are paid back, you reloan them?
Correct.
And the original funding was federal, wasn't it?
Well, actually, it was
Or-
a combination of things. The city, how many years ago, authorized about $500,000, and then we were able to put some federal funds.
Grant funding in it, yes.
And now we've got them all being,
Commingled,
we
yes.
recycled them like 3, 4, 5 times now.
Sure, but they make some big impacts, so
Yes, they
that's,
do.
that's a plus. What are your thoughts, committee? Do we have a motion then to approve that commercial rehab loan? Motion by Kelbach, is there a second? Second by Martins. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 6, and that's our last item, discussion and possible action regarding the sole source purchase of 2 aircraft tow tractors. And you've got some information in the packet on those. Typically at the airport, those are called tugs. They use them to push aircraft around. Not a whole lot of competitive places where one gets an item like that, but you've got some supporting documentation in your packets. Does anyone, I don't think that we have the airport manager with us, but does anyone have questions that maybe Mary Ann would have the answers to? Go ahead, Dave.
Will the other equipment be, will be receiving sales from the old equipment, or is it continue to be used? Anything?
I don't know the answer to that. I would assume that they're going to put it to the city's, like, auction or whatever.
Yeah,
but-
one of the pieces of equipment, we have to see if we can recondition it. It's pretty unsafe right now. One of them will still be in service, and we'll get some parts and stuff ordered for it and then determine whether it will either go to auction or sale.
Thank you.
Yep.
Perfect. Thanks, Eric. Do we have a motion then to approve sole source for the tug purchase? Motion by Nutting, second by Kelbach. Members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None are opposed. That motion carries. So that's the last item on the finance agenda. So a motion to adjourn would be appropriate. Motion by Kelbach, second by Martins. Members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None are opposed, so we'll stand adjourned. Committee of the Whole will begin in this chamber at 6 o'clock, and then council at 6:30, so.